morning, Year 1. Welcome back to our writing, and today is Thursday, which means we're going to be writing our resolution. In our resolution, we are introduced to our very scary giant. So we're going to be creating the giant and writing a lot of descriptive words about him. So here I have some pictures of a version of Jack and the Beanstalk where we can see a lot more description about the giant and what he is like. So I'm going to read some of the words and then we can talk about what does that mean? What is the giant really like? Inside, Jack could hear a thumping and a banging and a stamping and a crashing. So that tells us he's very loud because he's so enormous. He's very big. He's not quiet and tiny like a mouse. He's very big and very loud, and he's a very noisy person. Here we have a picture of his wife who is cleaning the floor, and it says, "Quick," said the giantess. "Hide, my husband is hungry." So he's very mean to his wife because he makes her clean all the floors and makes her do all the housework. And she knows to be scared of the giant because he's hungry and probably wants to eat someone. Here we have fee, fi, fo, fum. "Watch out, everyone, here I come," roared the giant. So he's very loud and very rude, he's trying to be very scary and terrifying. And here we've got him with a plate full of potatoes. The giant sat down for his supper. He ate 100 boiled potatoes and 100 chocolate biscuits. And then, feeling a bit happier, he got out his gold. So it tells us he's very greedy, eating 100 potatoes and eating 100 chocolate biscuits. He's a very hungry and greedy person. So thinking about the giant we know in Jack and the Beanstalk, fairy tales often have monsters. So we've got monsters and villains in our fairy tales who are often making very bad choices and often are very scary. So here I have some pictures of other fairy tale monsters you might know. So I want you to have a little think. Do you know any other fairy tale monsters or villains? Let's have 10 seconds thinking time for other ones. Okay, can you shout out any other fairy tale monsters or villains that you know in 3, 2, 1? Fantastic, Year 1, you know so many fairy tale monsters and villains. So what makes them scary? There are lots of things that make them scary. Not only the way they look, but the way they act, maybe the way what they say, the way they talk. Maybe what they like to do is quite scary. So it's lots of different things. So we can use all these ideas from our giant in Jack and the Beanstalk and all these other fairy tale monsters that you know to create your monster. So here I have a giant and we're going to be looking at the way he looks, what he says, what he likes and his actions. So I'm going to draw my monster. I'm going to draw my giant in Jack and the Beanstalk. So I'm going to draw a quick picture and then around it I'm going to write in detail what he says, what does he like to do, maybe about his personality and his actions. So now I'm going to show you my quick drawing of my giant and the detail all about him.
So here is my drawing of my giant and a very quick picture of what he looks like. So let's have a look. He has got yellow teeth because he's disgusting and never brushes them. He's smelly. You've got some little smelly, some flies around his armpits because he never washes. And his clothes aren't very well looked after. He's got a ginger beard. He's got no hair. And he has an axe because he loves to chop down wood where he lives, and he lives in the sky. Now what does he say? He likes to say, "Here I come," and fee fi fo fum, because he likes to scare children and anybody he can find. So around my giant I wrote some adjectives to describe him. So I wrote he was stinky, he's rude, enormous, lazy, terrifying, greedy and mean. So I've got some adjectives here. And at the bottom I wrote what he loves to do. His 2 favourite things: he loves eating eyeballs and rotten food, and he loves scaring children that like to climb up the beanstalk and visit him. So this is everything about my giant, and I want you to do the same as well.
Now it's your turn to draw your giant, so your monster. So don't forget, you're not only drawing your giant, but you're also writing around it what he says, drawing lots of detail by the way he or she looks, what they like to do, what horrible things do they like to do, and maybe you're going to challenge yourself, their personality. So just like mine, you're writing all about your giant. So not only are you drawing the picture, you're writing all around it. And then later in the lesson, when we are writing about our giant, you can use the vocabulary that you had. So notice I had lots of adjectives. You can use those later on in the lesson. So I'd like you to pause the video, and I'm going to give you about 6 minutes to go and do that. We're not going to spend too long because we've still got our writing to do. So I want you to have a quick 6 minutes, go and draw your monster, your giant, and write all about them on your piece of paper, and then come back when you're ready to do our writing. Okay, your time is up. So now we are going to innovate. We are changing parts of our story. So the first thing that we're going to change is our sentence starter. So after Jack has seen the expensive hen is when something suddenly happens. Suddenly the giant appears, and it's up to you what sentence starter you can pick, but they need to be sentence starters about the time. How quickly is that giant going to appear? So we have a few seconds later, immediately, instantly, in that moment. So here I'm going to show you how I wrote down my ideas for my sentence starters on my vocabulary list. So off I go.
So the first thing that we're going to write are some sentence starters for how quickly we spotted that giant. Now it's not going to be a few hours later, it's as soon as your main character has seen the expensive hen. So it's got to be very quick. So I like the word immediately. And I am going to write all my words using a capital letter because they go at the start of my sentence. Immediately, I like a few seconds later, and I also like instantly, to happen straight away. So here I have my 3 sentence starters, and I've spaced them out around the word sentence starter and number 1.
Because you're going to write your sentence starters. So you're going to write different ideas for how quick the giant appeared, and make sure you have a capital letter at the start because that's what you'll need when you're writing. So pause the video, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and then come back when you're ready for the next part of our story. Okay, so you've done your sentence starters. The next thing that we're going to change is our other sentence starter. So after Jack has seen the giant is when we have, fortunately, clever Jack grabs the expensive hen. So other words for fortunately. So it's our mood, our feeling. How are we feeling? Because Jack has made such a clever idea with really positive words. So we've got luckily, happily, thankfully. So here I'm going to write down on my vocabulary list different ideas for my sentence starter, thinking how grateful we are that Jack created a different idea.
So now we need to think of other sentence starters, but this time for number 2, it's for another word than fortunately. So it's another word for lucky. We're very grateful that we have a very clever main character. So I like the word luckily. So we're very lucky that he thought of such a great idea. Luckily, got my capital letter as well because this is also going to go at the start of a sentence. Thankfully, very thankful. And then we're going to pick one more. Happily. Very happy that our main character decided to take the hen so they could have money.
Pause the video and you have 2 minutes to do that and come back when you're ready for the final change in our story. Okay, and the last thing that we are going to change is our adjectives to describe our giant. So you should already have this for making your drawing, your poster about your giant. So I already had all my adjectives around my giant. I said he was terrifying. I said he was stinky and lazy. Here are some other ideas. Scary, gigantic, enormous, towering, horrifying. Maybe he's mean, he's rude. So if you haven't done the previous task where you needed to draw your giant and write the words around, now you are going to write your adjectives. So I will show you now how I wrote down my adjectives on my vocabulary list.
And now this is the exciting part. Number 3 is where you get to write some adjectives to describe your giant. So you can first, let's talk about the size of your giant. So I might say he is gigantic. Maybe he's also colossal, very tall. Maybe I also want to describe how he is. So he is very scary. Maybe he's also horrifying. And I could also describe the way he looks. So I could also describe maybe his beard, maybe his clothes, maybe his smell, maybe he's stinky, maybe he's a stinky, scary giant, maybe he's loud, describe his voice. So I can think of lots of different words, and I'm going to challenge myself and maybe even write 3 today. So write as many adjectives as you want, so you can write them down later to describe our monster, our giant.
So you'll go to write down your adjectives. If you have already written them down when you drew your monster, you can skip this step. But if you didn't do that task, then right now I want you to write at least 3 different adjectives to describe your giant. So pause the video and come back when you are ready. So now that you're ready, you have changed the description of your giant. You can put a lot of detail into that. And both your sentence starters, you are now ready to write your resolution. So our resolution, let's go through our actions. Ready with our capital letter? Suddenly, he heard fee, fi, fo, fum, and a huge, terrifying giant appeared. Full stop. Fortunately, clever Jack grabbed the expensive hen and raced back down to his house. Full stop. So the first sentence is all about seeing that giant. If you would like, you can add way more detail than that. So when I do my writing, I don't have to just stick to that a huge, terrifying giant appeared. I could also challenge myself and write another sentence about that giant and what he is like. And then we have our second sentence where Jack, or the main character, my main character is now Tom, grabs the hen and races back down home. So here I have my story map to help me. I'm going to cross out both our sentence starters. Suddenly, unfortunately, so I'm not using that. And then I can use everything else to help me. And I've got my vocabulary list. Once I've finished my resolution, I will then use my writing checklist to help me. So off I go writing my resolution.
Okay, now we are going to write our resolution, and I'm writing underneath my problem from yesterday on the same piece of paper, my same book. And I've also got my very important vocabulary list, which has everything that I will need today. So first, looking at my story map, I know that this is the really fun part when my giant appears, but my first thing I need to pick is a sentence starter. So how quickly does my character Tom notice the giant? Here I have a few options. I really like the option a few seconds later. So I'm going to take that off my list, a few seconds later, and I'm just going to copy that. So I'm going to miss the line from yesterday's work. Capital A, so nice and tall, a few seconds later. Another comma after my sentence starter. A few seconds later, what happens? What does he do? He hears something. But we don't say hear because this is past tense. So he heard. He heard. He heard. And this is where I put my speech in. So I'm going to do speech marks that look like a 66. And then I'm going to write my speech. And I get to copy it straight from my story map. And notice it's all in capital letters. So I'm going to copy it. Fee. By. Bow. From. You've got exclamation mark at the end because it's very scary. And then I need to close my speech marks. So that's going to be at the end. It's like a 99. So a few seconds later, he heard fee, fi, fo, fum. And what comes? A giant. Well, not just any kind of giant. This is where my really fun part comes in. I get to describe my giant in all the detail that I can. So I'm challenging myself and picking 2 adjectives, and I would suggest you do the same. So I want to maybe talk about maybe the size and maybe something else about my giant. So I like the word the colossal. And I might say he's quite stinky because he doesn't wash. So I'm saying an stinky, colossal, which is very big, giant. And I've got my spelling for giant on my sheet as well. So it's really important that we have this to help us now. Giant appeared. Looking to my story map to help me. Appeared. And ed because it's past tense. Fantastic. And if you really wanted to, maybe you could write a sentence about how to make your main character feel. Maybe I could have written, Tom was terrified. Tom couldn't believe what he saw. If you really want that extra stretch and that extra challenge. But I'm just going to carry on. And now I am going to write my next sentence. So this is where we're really glad that our main character has a fantastic plan. So we need to look for number 2 and we need a sentence starter. I like the word luckily. We're very lucky that he thought of this plan. So I'm going to have luckily, capital letter, luckily. Come on. Luckily, we had clever Jack. Oh, maybe I could change the word clever. I'm going to say smart. Smart Tom. Make sure I've got a capital letter for Tom. Smart Tom grabbed, look at my story map to help me, grabbed, ED because it's past tense, grabbed the golden hen, and what did he do? He grabbed it, but he wants to get away. So he needs to go back down the beanstalk. But how? We had race down. Maybe I can really challenge myself and change that as well. And he slid down and slid down the... Oh, this is where I can challenge myself. Beanstalk again. I'm getting my sheet from yesterday, my Wednesday sheet, and looking for my words for my beanstalk. I used nearly all of mine, but I had one more left. Enormous. And I'm now going to use that. That's why it's really good. We write more than just one option so we can use it maybe later on in our story. Slid down the enormous beanstalk, copying my spelling from beanstalk as well from that sheet. Beanstalk to his house. And you could have challenged yourself there and had an adjective for your house. To his old house, to his ramshackle house, it's up to you. So now, really important part, we need to read back our sentence to edit it and make sure it makes sense. We haven't missed anything out. A few seconds later, come on, he heard fee, fi, fo, fum, and a stinky colossal giant appeared. Luckily, Smart Tom grabbed the golden hen and slid down the enormous beanstalk to his house. Excellent, I've got my capital letters for my two sentences. That means I also have two full stops. Got my sentence starters with my commas. And I've got lots of adjectives because I've challenged myself. Even more than one adjective, I've got two to describe my giant. Fantastic.
Now it's your go to write your resolution. You are not having our sentence starters, so let's cross those out. But everything else is still the same. So you should have your story map to help you on the screen, your vocabulary list ready with all your keywords, and also your description of your giant to help you. And don't forget, if you really want to challenge yourself and be really creative, write another sentence after the first one all about the giant and what he or she is like. I would love to see how creative you can get with our monster. After you have finished your resolution and writing your sentences, make sure you use your writing checklist to edit your sentence. It's very important. You're checking for capital letters, full stops, making sure your sentence makes sense by reading it out loud. So I can't wait to see your work on Seesaw. So now you're going to pause the video so you have the story map on the screen and you're going to write your resolution. Good luck.